The following presentation is brought to you by the Realm Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome to the George and Tony Entertainment Show. Prepare for awesome mediocrity.
Hi everybody, welcome to the George and Tony Entertainment Show. We're the 8th and 9th dwarves of the Realm Network. I'm George, and Tony is in a perpetual loop on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. But that's neither here nor there because we are still a weekly, family-friendly podcast about pop culture, from our point of view. As always, our show is brought to you by the Amazon link at georgeandtony.com. We would appreciate it if you would consider doing all of your online shopping using the link at our website. It won't cost you any extra, and it will help support the show. And speaking of supporting the show, we ask that you continue to at least try to tell your friends, family, and mortal enemies about our show. We keep saying here how amazing it is how many people don't know podcasts exist. There are those who know they exist, but have resisted sticking their toe in the water and giving them a try. And I hope that maybe you can introduce them to the magical world of podcasting and introduce them to the George and Tony Entertainment Show. And I'd also like you to introduce them to all the shows on the Realm Network. We have a variety of shows for all different interests, and I believe that they will find something that is incredibly entertaining to them. Hopefully it's this show. Now, I know our last few episodes without Tony have centered around the world of comic books, and that is because that is my hobby. I'm an avid comic book reader, as you all know, and when Tony's not here and we have guests and guest hosts, they tend to be in the realm of the comic book world. For instance, for the last 2 episodes, Rich Gallhofer of Comic Logic at comiclogicva.com filled in on episodes 118 and 119. We also had Hope Nicholson on for a portion of the show on episode 117, and she is the owner of Bedside Press, and she has edited plenty of comic and geek-related books that are available right now for you to purchase via the Amazon link at georgeandtony.com. So I don't want to scare anybody away and make them think that we only talk about comics here. That is definitely not the case. What we are is a pop culture show. The thing that differentiates us from other generic pop culture shows that don't have any particular niche subject matter every week is that we replace what I would call tabloid talk with our hobbies. Tony's an avid gamer. I am a longtime comic book reader. So instead of talking about pop star relationships, Kim Kardashian's butt, Justin Bieber's latest faux pas, Tony and I replace that talk with our geek-centric interests. This week, I have the pleasure to talk to 2 of the 4 hosts of one of my favorite podcasts because besides for comics, I am a fan of the Disney World parks down in Orlando, Florida. You've heard me talk about them here on the show. Since the show started, I've been down there I think twice. And in the last 5 or 6 years, maybe I've been there about 4 or 5 times, which isn't the normal way my vacations have gone. It just had worked out that way. And having gone so often in such a short period of time, I've come to appreciate other parts of the park that most people may ignore. Because let's face it, when you go down to Disney World, sometimes it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. You may not go there for 5 years at a time, and there's so much there, and you could take a lot for granted. My guests today, Todd McCartney and Brian P. Miles from the Retro Disney World podcast, which can be found at RetroDisneyWorld.com, talk about the history of the parks. If you go to their website, they have restored films from the early days of the Magic Kingdom. Now, this would be even pre-Epcot opening. We're talking about 1971, 1972. They've restored film footage. They've got photos. They talk in depth on their podcast about attractions that don't exist anymore or the history of favorite attractions and how they've changed over time. They talk about original blueprints and how they were altered in between the time of conception and the time of being built. They have guests on their show who actually worked at the park in the early days, and they give first-hand accounts to the guys about their time there and things that are more mythical than factual that the guys get confirmation about. So as much as I want you to introduce your friends to the George and Tony Entertainment Show and all the other shows on the Realm Network, I want you to introduce them to Retro Disney World, which can be found on iTunes and at their site at RetroDisneyWorld.com. They're also known as RetroWDW, and we're going to talk about all their social media presence and how you can get in touch with them and how you can follow them on all the platforms. Plus, if you're listening to this during the week that it posts, which is the week of May 16th, we have a little bit of a preview of what they're going to be talking about on this month's show. They had put out the word to their listeners regarding what they wanted them to talk about on May's episode. Retro Disney World is a monthly podcast, by the way. And they put it out there. They gave everybody 3 choices, and you get to hear here on the show what the choice is for the subject of the May episode of RetroDisneyWorld.com. So to any new listeners out there who might be hearing my voice for the first time because you are listeners of the Retro Disney World podcast, welcome to the show. I hope you'll give us a chance, maybe go through our archives, find some of our other shows, or listening over the next couple of weeks. Tony is scheduled to be back next week. And if you're a current listener of the show, thank you for continuing to stick with us and spreading the word. And I hope that you enjoy meeting Todd McCartney and Brian P. Miles of the Retro Disney World podcast. Cue those chimes. I am thrilled to be joined tonight by Todd McCartney and Brian P. Miles, 2 of the 4 gentlemen behind the Retro Disney World website and podcast. Check them out at RetroDisneyWorld.com, and we're going to be talking more about their site and all the things associated with it, but let's get right into it. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, George.
Yes, thank you.
I've been wanting to talk to you guys for a while. I've discovered your podcast, and to be honest with you, I don't know how I discovered it. Before we get into the show, why don't you tell the folks about RetroDisneyWorld.com and where else they can find stuff about you guys and what the website's all about.
Sure. So, George, Retro Disney World, or it's also RetroWDW, that's how we're known on Twitter and Facebook and other places. It's really kind of a one-stop visit for people looking for old Disney stuff, old Disney World information from photos, pictures, videos, films, and of course, as you mentioned, the podcast. So it's kind of like you can come here and really take a trip back in time and kind of look at the way it was. But that was the original incarnation of it, and then as we grew and got bigger and did some different things, and we started doing the restorations of the films and started doing the podcast, those 2 things have really become the mainstay of the website, where people are coming for the films as well as the podcast.
Can you tell the folks almost like your origin story? Not only for you 2 guys, but the other 2, and we'll have to give them shout outs during the show because they're not here.
We'll roll the clocks all the way back to 1992. How's that?
That's fantastic.
Pre-internet days. So we'll condense 20 some years into 5 minutes here.
Okay.
So way back at the end of 1992, I was heading into college, and at the time I had self-published a book called Walt Disney World Made Simple, and previous to that it was called The Very Unofficial Guide to Walt Disney World. And it was pre-internet days, and you could actually get the book for free over things called Usenet, and all the geeks out there will know what I'm talking about. So anyway, I went off to college, and I actually started to produce an actual book where you could buy it, physical, copy, and it was my late night pizza and calzone and beer money for through college by selling that thing. That begot a website called DisneyCorner.com, which I ran for a number of years, starting in the late 90s. And eventually, as I got into the early 2000s, the book kind of fizzled out. DisneyCorner.com started doing whatever it was doing on its own with forums and discussions, but it never caught on like the sites that you see out there today. Whatever WDW Magic or Mice Chat or any of those. It never caught on like that. So I get married, I have a kid, I kind of fall away from the Disney cycle. Kid gets to be about 3 years old. You start thinking about the way things were. You take him down there on his first visit, and that's when I kind of had the idea in around 2011, 2012 to start the site RetroDisneyWorld.com. And I kind of took a cue from Walt, someday sitting there, on the park bench, he thought there'd be a place to go play together. Well, I thought there should be a place to put all this old crap that everybody's got hanging around. And everybody at that point was writing articles about Epcot and the way it was and the way the Magic Kingdom was and the resorts, and still tons of fantastic blog articles out there, but nobody was capturing and saving all those images and saving those things together. So Retro Disney World ran for about a year or so, and through Twitter I got to know Brian, who's with us tonight, Brian P. Miles. He's waving in the video, but we know he is.
Well, I didn't want to speak over you because I was just going to say greetings from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
I also met JT Kuzier. Actually, JT started writing for Retro Disney World in the very beginning when we started it, and I also met Hal Bowers. So as we got to know each other on Twitter, I said I went on a kind of a podcast tour introducing the website, and I said, "Hey guys, I've been a guest on some podcasts. Who wants to join me?" And a couple months later, we had our very first awkward episode, but it actually came out pretty good, and we kept going from there. And one of the things that boosted it was between opening the website and starting the podcast, I got into film restoration. And I started by taking my grandparents' film from 1972, having it digitally transferred, and then learning how to use all sorts of different pieces of software to remove the scratches and take out the shake and take out the flicker and improve the color and bring it back to life. And I got to know Brian. One of the reasons that I got to know him via Twitter was because he said, I went to what was it, Brian, a garage sale or something, or a yard sale?
Yes.
Yeah. He picked up this, what we refer to today as the Pristine 71 film, which was a home movie from November 1971, so just a few weeks after the Magic Kingdom opened. So he sent that to me and restored it. That was one of our first films that we talked about. And we're now heading on to podcast episode 19. We've restored probably a good 20 to 25 different home movies, both some of our own, and we scour them on eBay. Brian has this knack for finding them at garage sales, and he has this knack for finding everything of 1971 too.
well, the story of that reel is that I came across it, and it just said Florida, November 1971, and I looked at it and said, "There's no way anybody went to Florida in November of 1971 and didn't go to Disney World, which had opened 6 weeks earlier."
That's right.
So on a whim, I bought it and said, maybe, just maybe, we get lucky. And, Todd saw me take a couple of screen grabs literally taking a picture of a projection and saying, "Hey, look at this cool film I found." And he contacted me through Twitter and said, "If you send that to me, I'll restore it." And so we sent it up there, and I think it was probably like when Bob Ballard looked through the monitors the first time he saw the boiler of the Titanic. Todd's like, "You have no idea what kind of shape this thing's in. This is like pristine." And so it really has become at the time, it was the earliest known 8mm home movie footage that was anywhere in public circulation. We've looked all over. There's nothing earlier, so we were the earliest glimpse of the park. The other interesting thing about it was that the cinematographer, the guy taking the movie, didn't care about who he was with. All of the footage was scenery footage. It was like if you could send someone back there and say, "Well, here's the stuff I'd want you to get shots of. Don't worry about Aunt Ethel standing in front of the flower market." And this guy just went and took it was straight scenery for 4 glorious minutes.
Exactly. And as Brian alluded to there, it was the oldest known footage up until a point. So we'll leave it at that. There's new footage coming.
Oh, all right. Oh, a nice tease.
I think we can say the tease.
Yeah,
we have found earlier footage
exactly
in almost equally good condition.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're working on that one right now?
It's actually completed, and we just have to time out a release for it. But
it may stay there until our appearance at Destination D later this year.
Okay, and that might be a good thing to do, to hold off on it. Yeah,
and hold it. So what's really interesting, George, is that through the film restoration, we've actually uncovered kind of a bit of a social experiment, or I don't know which one to look at, how you want to say it, but what's interesting is that if you roll the clocks back to 1971, you think about a cartridge of film being only 3 minutes. The cost of the film and processing around, I think it was anywhere from $8 to $10 back then, including the processing and the shipping. Many of these people went to the theme park armed with maybe one, maybe up to 3 film cartridges. So you're talking anywhere from 3 to 9 minutes to record your visit. And what's really interesting is that if you compare, the 20 or so films that we've restored, there's amazing similarities between all of them.
Sure.
There is we're parking We're driving. We are on the monorail going over, and in one particular film that I remember, so it was only 3 minutes. Their entire day. Yeah, at the beginning of the film, it was real quick things: 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, and then towards the end of the day, he realized he still had 3 minutes, and the day was getting longer. Had grown on, and now you had 15 seconds, and he said 20 seconds. But again, going back to the scenes, that there were just certain spots that in that time period captured people's imaginations and captured the way that they wanted to replay the Magic Kingdom back for their friends. And you got to remember, this really was a way you were making a travel log, and you would bring it back home, and you'd sit people down in your house and play it. It was a social event. And it's really interesting to see the amazing similarities. I mean, sometimes we get one and we're like, oh my God, it's the same stuff over again. And you're looking frame by frame to see something that may give a clue about something that that you need to uncover.
We have a joke. Todd will say, like, I'll get a reel in and I'll run it through the editor and start looking, and I say, what's on it? And I say, oh, okay, it's TTC, Seven Seas Lagoon, Turnstiles, Main Street, Town Square, Castle, Flower Market. I mean, it's almost like we've seen it so many times that and parades. I mean, people that probably 50% of the footage we've seen, not always that we've restored, but 50% of the footage that we've gotten has just been of parades.
Right.
I don't know what the infatuation was. And watching a parade over and over and over again of so many of them in silence it's a little numbing.
I don't care for them now. So,
no, exactly. Even with sound and in person.
I find it amazing that you started writing the book, Todd, when you were going into college.
Actually, I started 3 years prior to that. So I was like,
you're like 15 years old, 16 years old when you started this?
There, yeah.
You grew up in the Northeast, though, right?
I grew up in New Jersey, yeah.
In New Jersey. How often had you been down there that this fascination was there?
Well, I thought that question he was going to ask is, how often did you get out of the basement?
Yeah.
You know, my bedroom was down there. Let's see. I started writing it probably around 89, 90. And by that point, I had been there 4 or 5 times by that point. Now, one of them I would never remember because it was 1980. I was only 6 years old. I went down there and really started to absorb things, and I started to collect memorabilia and ephemera and all sorts of other stuff. I scoured Bird Bomb's guide, and when I went down there in 90, I think I went back in 91 and 92 as well. And my grandparents went down there often. They'd bring me back material, and they'd bring me back eyes and ears and different things. They'd get friendly with cast members and come back with all sorts of cool shit. And basically, I had so much knowledge of it, and also I kind of liked navigating the parks and figuring out a way to get from A to B quicker and all that. So it really became kind of a handbook type guide rather than something you're going to sit down and plan your entire vacation around. And the real reason it even started was my mother had a pen pal in England, and she wrote to us and said, we're going to Disney World. Todd knows a lot about it. Can he pen a quick letter to us? Well, I penned like 10 pages, and then I'm like, well, there's no point in putting this to waste. So I broke it out into chapters and sections, and it grew and grew and grew. And having your father as a printer, and my mother was an illustrator, and she had illustrated some books on her own. My dad was the printer, and it was became a natural fit to produce that. And now in the technology age, we're so beyond that too.
And as much as Brian's busting your chops about it, though, while some kids your age at the time were down in their basement playing Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, you were scouring the maps to Disney World trying to figure out all this stuff. That's pretty amazing. Now, Brian, is your story
amazing or just as dorky as
No, I love it. This is great stuff. Now, Brian, is your story similar as much as you're busting Todd's chops?
Not remotely.
Okay. Now, are you born and bred in the Northeast also?
I'm Philadelphia, born and raised.
Okay. So again, how about you? How many times had you gone down, say, up until your teen years? Had you gone down? One time.
We went, I tell the story on our Christmas episode this year, but the short version is Christmas Eve, I was 13 years old. My parents gave us an envelope on Christmas Eve. My brother, older brother, younger sister, and I. We opened it, and it said we were going to Disney World a month.
Wow.
So we had a 3-day trip down there, plus a day at SeaWorld at the end of January. And I came home from there enamored with Epcot Center, enamored with the Tiki Birds, enamored with the resort altogether, and just, really wanted to go back. And at some point in high school, I found out that one of my acquaintances, who became a very good friend my senior year in high school, had been there like 14 times or something. Like, he started telling me, my family and I, we kind of go like every year, every other year, and he had been to Disneyland. So he became my Disney buddy. And I had told him when we were graduating high school, like, look, I really want to like go back there, and can we go sometime on a trip? Can we plan for it? So we saved about 3 years, and then a group of us who were high school friends drove down, which is about 15 hours, and in January of 98, or 95 rather, I'm sorry. And so we made it back in 95. And then 98 was when I had started working and earning a living as an adult. And from that year on, there had been 1 or 2 visits every year ever since. Usually one, until more recently. And now I get down there 2 or 3 times a year, mostly to visit friends. I mean, not that I don't love to go to the parks. I do,
right.
and I go on every visit. But I've made a lot of friends in Florida and friends through the Retro Disney World from around the country that I'm always intersecting with them down there. So that's as much of an attraction now as the actual parks are.
Would JT and Hal have kind of similar stories when a couple of times as kids became enamored? And
well, JT was a fetus when most of us were in high school. So.
Yeah. There are many times where we talk, and he's like, "Yeah, I wasn't born yet."
Yeah, right. Yes.
But JT's family used to vacation at Fort Wilderness. They would camp there for like 2 weeks,
right,
every year.
And he's still got a big passion for it.
But would only go to the parks a couple days over the course of the 2 weeks. Like that, the Fort Wilderness was really the attraction for them.
Right.
So when we did our Fort Wilderness episode, he led that discussion. It was really fascinating to listen to him. I mean, all the nuances and powerful firsthand experiences he had there. So it was an interesting perspective.
Yeah, a lot of people probably. I know I've never done that, and probably never will. Yeah.
And Hal's family moved from Buffalo when he was 3 or 4 years old, maybe.
Yeah, he was pretty young. Yeah,
he was pretty young, but they moved down there the year the park opened.
Right. He had family that moved down there to work.
He had family that moved down there to work on construction in the park. So he and his family have been down there ever since, and he grew up, going there every now and then on a weekend. And then in his teen and 20s, spent a lot of time in the parks. So he's our wise old Yoda when it comes to the parks.
It was Hal who attended the opening of, at the time, Disney MGM Studios, right?
Yeah,
yes.
But your show is primarily, though, the history of the parks prior to that, right?
Well, the intention was that we set a mark in the beginning. It's kind of the stick in the mud and the sand, if you will, is 25 years.
Okay.
Kind of going back is kind of what we're considered retro. So because we're coming up, around that now, and we said, all right, coming up to 1990 or so, we said, all right, we're going to induct Disney MGM Studios in. Plus, how old? It just turned 25, right? Is that what it was? Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So that's kind of the rule of thumb, is that we go back 25 years and bring things in. And, no, we're not going to be touching Animal Kingdom for a little while yet.
Yeah, we've got about 8 years left before we catch up to Animal Kingdom.
But there are things, there's so much to cover up to that 1989, 1990 point right now that it's just amazing stuff. So, yeah, there has to be a cutoff.
Right.
The one interesting is that somebody there was a podcast producer that I spoke to, and he goes, if I had done a Retro Disney podcast way back when I started this, I'd be done by now. And I thought to myself, it will never be done, but there's just so much to talk about, because some of the things that we do talk about, you would not, I never even thought that I would spend, 15, 20 minutes talking about the Wave Machine, or talking about, Roy's Cabin, or
Roy's Cabin.
Yep.
I mean, we've spent more time talking about the Jungle Cruise frogs than the Jungle Cruise frogs actually existed in the Jungle Cruise.
Right. And actually, believe it or not, one of the films we restored, one of the ones from my grandfather and another person, was the very first proof that the jungle frogs actually existed. It was legend up until then. In one of the films we restored, we have moving footage of the jungle cruise frogs actually doing their thing. So we've been uncovering little things like that, little tidbits here and there over the years.
Yeah, that was in the 71 film.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's right. It was in
the pristine 71 film.
It was like 9 frames, and that's it. We got them all.
Todd turned it into a GIF.
Yeah,
You had proof of life of the frogs.
exactly.
I love how you educate us or remind us, depending on what perspective the listener has, when you guys talk about this stuff on your show, and how the episode about how attending that opening. Mm-hmm. I love that episode, and of course I encourage everybody to listen to all your episodes, but that episode was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was, because that episode is the one that we've done so far that had a very personal connection to Hal, and also sure. we had Dave Ensign on that show as well, and because they were great friends then, and for those that don't know, Dave Ensign is also known as Hoot Gibson, so it's a lot of fame if you query that, but what's interesting and what people have written to us and they like about it is they like the personal aspect of it. They like hearing the stories firsthand. They like hearing how a specific film or a specific event is tied to people's lives and what they felt about. Just as Brian talked about his Christmas story, and I've got my grandparents' story, and Hal's got that, and JT. There's all these great things, and that was I think the only episode so far where it has been a complete recollection from start to finish. And if I recall correctly, Brian, I don't think we even did anything else that episode, right? I think we did some comments and corrections, and it was.
We even edited some stuff out.
That's true.
I mean, just because they spent over 2 hours talking about that first day, and the really fascinating thing was he kind of remembered all of it. I mean, between the two of them, they remembered here, then we went here, then we went there, then the whipped cream was really cold in the sound studio, and then this, and then that. It was neat. It was.
Yeah, the recollection. Maybe they kept a diary or a journal. Do you think, or do you think it was really embedded in their mind so much, because they went into pretty amazing detail about things that don't exist anymore?
Yeah, I don't know how many notes that they ever kept or photos. I mean, I know they were both of them were very clicky when it came to the camera at the parks, but I don't know where they got all the information from the first day.
Yeah, I mean, I know Hal had an opening day map in front of him and was kind of retracing his steps, and and then from there they were talking about everything that they did. And being very hungry and not being able to find things to eat. And Hal still laments the Catwalk Bar no longer existing, which was upstairs over top of the Brown Derby, I guess. I saw him take a picture of the staircase there and say, "Oh, that's the way to the Catwalk Bar." Just a couple weeks ago, he tweeted a picture of that.
Do you go to the parks with a clinical eye now? Can you really, because you're historians, really, when it comes down to this. This may be your hobby, but you're really historians about the parks. Can you go there and actually enjoy yourselves after having been there so many times, and now you go, "Oh yeah, I know how this is. I know it by rote," or this used to be in this spot, but now it's this ride, or it's this the bathroom is here, but this wasn't a bathroom before?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Brian go first, but then I've got my own stuff.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I'll say this: one of the things that I think is, attracts all types to our podcast. Is that all four of us still enjoy going to the parks. I mean, yes, there are things we wish were still there. Yes, there are things about today's parks we don't particularly care for. But we don't spend any time on our podcast talking about it, because we're really there to kind of talk about things that aren't there anymore, things that used to be different, in more of a fun, wistful way. So personally, it's still a vacation for me because I have to fly there.
Sure.
And even if it's 2 or 3 times in a year, it's still not a place I can go without a lot of planning and a lot of money and a lot of, so I still plan my fast pass before every trip, and plan my meals and all of that. So I love it. I mean, I don't look at it. I don't look at it that way. There are things I notice now that I didn't used to notice. And so an experience I had just last year, I was walking through World Showcase, and I've always been more, the way I used to tour the parks was I was very driven by, how many rides I can get on, and no, I don't want to go on any boring movies and over time, as if you visit more frequently, well, okay, I can skip, I don't need to wait in line for Toy Story Midway Mania. It's the same ride. But I will go in and watch Impressions de France, and I'll tell you what, I had seen it over the years, never paid much attention to it, and Todd knows. I about 4 or 5 years ago, I sat through it, and it just blew me away. And I mean, the film's essentially unchanged, except for a couple of frames since 1982, but I now never skip it. I sit through it. And it moves me every time I see it. It's just beautiful, and the soundtrack, and knowing more of the history, because we've talked about the guys behind filming it, and the beautiful score by Buddy Baker, and I mean all those things that I didn't know the first couple times I saw it. The other experience also in World Showcase I had was I do look for detail now, and I delight in it, which before I used to take it for granted there, because you do get immersed. And so an example of that is I walked into in Morocco, and first you go into the little courtyard house there with the fountains, and then you move into the shops in the back. And I walked into one of the shops, and I was with somebody who's a regular who lives there year round and has been to the parks a billion times. And I walked in and I looked up in this shop, and there's this whole level of detail on the second level of this shop that is not, there for the public to shop in or anything. It's just there to see as scenery. And we both said, wow, never noticed this before. I mean, so you do notice some of that kind of stuff as you visit a little more frequently, or as you look for it. But it hasn't changed the way I look at my visits there. I mean, it's still a vacation. I still love it, and it still lets me disconnect from the outside world.
Well, so similar things to what Brian said, where no more in the rush as you get older, and also too, I have a son in tow now when we go down as a family, so there's certain things and aspects I want to see, and I see it through his eyes, which is neat, as my grandparents saw the parks through my eyes. There are certain aspects that I walk through, and if I'm not with somebody as geeky as myself, I'm probably me pointing out to friends, well, over here they used to. They all look at me like I got three heads. Like I don't care. That's, that was there. But when you're with the right side of people, that enjoy that stuff, it's kind of fun. But even then, I've been with friends before, and I took them on a boat tour and went around and pointed out where the wave machine was, and told them the story of Roy's cabin and stuff like that. Some of it is hard too. There are certain things, as Brian pointed out too. There are points and parts of all the theme parks that we miss and really. Wish we could go back to. For me personally, it's I think stuff I miss, and a lot of people miss the most, is Epcot Center and the way that it was in the mid '80s. A lot of us who had a very fond memory of it and really identified with the different theme park, with the different attractions and pavilions, have a hard time with seeing it the way it is now. But the great part is you go out and you seek those things that are still there, and you get the enjoyment out of them. Yeah, I mean, I still go down there about once a year. I thoroughly enjoy it, and I've actually now tried to go and see other things that I didn't do than when I used to go when I was younger. Whether it's horseback riding or archery or something else, or taking my son to the Chippendale Jamboree, the marshmallow roast and movie. Those are things I didn't do as a kid, and doing those now, and also being old enough to enjoy the adult beverages. So it's always a fantastic.
But that is one of the things. A lot of people don't have the opportunity to go as often as you guys. And I've been lucky enough in the past 6 or 7 years to average about once a year, once every 18 months.
Okay.
Prior to that, maybe it was every 3 years or something like that. And I'm enjoying going back down. And I do like it's almost like a weight is lifted when you don't feel like you have to rush everything in and fit everything in, because this is the only time I'm going to be here for 10 years or even ever. And one of the things that I enjoy about your show is I used to go down when I was a kid. Also, my grandparents lived down there. And when you guys talk about attractions that existed at one time and don't exist any longer, you help me gain my sanity back, because there are times when I think, I could have sworn something was here, and now there's something else in its place, like I was talking about before. Do you get feedback from your listeners about episodes that really resonated? Oh, this ride is no longer there, or are they asking you for a particular ride or attraction that doesn't exist anymore? How is the community responding to things like that?
The community comes back, well, it comes back a lot of different ways. A lot of times, a lot of the feedback is they can't wait for an episode on X. They can't wait for it. They remember it. The other part of the feedback is, oh my gosh, thanks for doing that show on World of Motion, because I totally remember writing that.
Those were great episodes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
they were a long time
Yeah,
producer.
they did bring back a lot of memories.
It was like James Joyce's Ulysses, that episode.
Yeah.
all two parts of it.
Yeah.
And then we're stirring people's memories in ways that they come back with great questions, and we're also stirring people's memories in ways that we can't even answer. One individual wrote to us and they said, "Do you remember the ride where you were on a boat and then you went through the sewers of Paris?" And we're like,
We spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out what they could have been talking about and whether that existed in another park or something.
Right.
I think we got stumped.
Yeah, we did. And so we certainly try, if any listeners write, and we try to answer their questions. But it is varied. But we are certainly, poking at their memory banks, and they are, flinching back with us with certain questions and memories.
You guys have made me go back to digging out old photos based on some of your episodes to try and look back at, like, say, World of Motion. It's been so long that until you guys mentioned certain things, it was almost like a myth in my mind that I actually went to this place. And then as you were bringing things back, like, for instance, you allowed listeners to decide what your next episode is going to be about.
Yes.
And you gave them 3 choices.
Yep.
And one of the choices was Communicore.
Yep.
I don't really remember much about Communicore.
Communicore is probably one of the things that people skipped the most of in Epcot, I would say. And also, too, I think most people got Communicore confused because there was an east and west, and that was the only thing really delineating on the map was east and west. And people say, oh, I did that. Well, yeah, you only went to one side. But Communicore, at its peak, had all sorts of presentations, and they were kind of like Interventions is today with the mini sponsored areas. However, there's a lot of areas of Interventions that have been completely shuttered and shut down and just boarded up. But you had,
and they knocked down part of it.
Yeah, that's
they made it a lot smaller.
Yep. So you had Smart One, you had the Build Your Roller Coaster and Ride It, you had the Astuto Computer Review and Epcot Computer Central. AT&T had this huge thing on the population and communication. There was also I forget, was the Theater of Choices, or I forget the exact name of it, where you would go in and on your seat would be a number keypad, and they would interview you and you would hit the number. So there was a lot of really neat things, and it hooked up to the original electric umbrella, and where Club Cool was, that was part of it, and it was a much more cohesive experience than it is now, as much as it was designed and sponsored by different sponsors in each different area. It was a completely different cohesive experience. And then you had the Centurium, which is where Mouse Gear is today, which was a 2-level shopping experience that will never be matched.
I seem to even recall that, and until you mentioned it, I thought that maybe I was at some off-site. I was remembering some off-site tourist attraction or a shop.
Right,
and then when you mentioned it, I started thinking about it. I said, yes, I do remember that. I was there. I shopped there. I remember that.
Yep.
Yeah. Centaur, because you go to Mouse Gear, you go to World of Disney downtown, or Disney Springs now, and you're used to these whimsical, cluttered kind of retail environments with those bright 90s and 2000s Disney colors. Yeah. And one of the things we talked about when we touched on Centurium was it was really like a fancy department store.
Yeah.
And it had that feel, and I think Hal gave high marks to the air conditioning in there.
The air conditioning at Epcot, all of Epcot was fantastic.
Yeah,
in the
just
80s.
super cold. And,
yep.
But really that when you see pictures now of what that shopping experience looked like, you're just like, boy, it just screams classy.
Yep, and there was space between stuff, like Brian said. It wasn't clutter. It had the upstairs where Hal would play his Atari
5200
games, and I remember going up there and just being wowed by all the cool merchandise. So, but yeah, Communicore was one of the 3 potential choices, along with the Land and the Living Seas.
Part of what you do every week, just to let my listeners know if they haven't listened to your show yet, is you have the contest for people to identify the snippet of a song that you play or something from an attraction.
Right.
And one of your recent ones was from Cranium Command.
That's right. Yeah.
I remembered it sounded familiar to me, but I could not remember for the life of me the name of that attraction. Now, that was part of a larger pavilion, though, wasn't it? That no longer exists?
Well, the pavilion is there. It's still located between where Horizons was, which is now Mission Space, and then between that and between Universe of Energy. And most people don't even know that it's still there because the trees have grown up, and they use it now for a festival center for the flower and garden shows and different
what they do?
corporate events can rent space in there. So the pavilion itself exists. It was a half-dome structure, or a dome structure, if you will, with a kind of a, to use the word again, whimsical mobile of such hanging down from the middle, and it had all these beautiful 90s turquoise and pink and purple colors and tiled floors, and it had a number of different attractions in the pavilion. Most notable, as you mentioned, was Cranium Command, which was sitting inside the head of a 12-year-old boy as he goes through the day. The headliner attraction was Body Wars, which essentially you can take Star Tours and put it in a medical field and shrink yourself down into the bloodstream, and you're injected into somebody's body and flown around and stuff. It was a little
I remember
queasier.
that now. Man.
The splinter scene is what most people remember in the red blood cells.
Yeah.
You get zapped out. And the somewhat controversial film of The Making of Me, which is all about kind of how babies come to be, but not in the way that you would think. But that was done very well and tastefully. And there was a Goofy on Health, I think was the name of it. There were some places, small places to pick up some healthy bites, some exercise machines hooked up to video. The faster you pedal, the faster you go down the street type of thing.
Right.
It was the Health Pavilion had been on Epcot's drawing board since the very beginning, but it was sponsored by MetLife initially, and it didn't. Brian, when did it close? 98 maybe.
Well, it was slow. It started to be run seasonal, and then they just stopped reopening it. Either late 90s or I think it's more closer to early 2000, maybe 2001, when they finally stopped opening it altogether. Because they used to open it because they were, they had a problem with attractions there because Test Track took so long to actually get up and running. So they didn't, they were trying to only close one thing at a time as they were redoing pieces of Epcot. But the reason Horizons lived on about 3 years beyond when it was supposed to was because Test Track wasn't done.
Right.
So anyway, it was somewhere around there. That they shuttered it, but not only is the pavilion still there, George, the attraction is still there.
Yeah.
They've probably taken the animatronics out of it and are in storage somewhere, but the attraction is actually just behind a set of doors,
right.
and still sitting there intact.
Someone had visited. The Body Wars machines have been completely moved, but as Brian said, the queue and the actual physical space for the ride is still, the attraction is still there. Someone had checked out the Cranium Command theater and said that the theater was still intact and Buzzy was still hanging up on the wall, and the video projectors and everything were still there, and it was basically waiting for a show. Now, there's a couple pictures online that you can find of Buddy looking in a pretty sad state, but who knows? I always think with the movie Inside Out, you've got a perfect head and a couple rework of some films and some new audio animatronic. You may have a new attraction in the future.
One of the comments you made in one of your other episodes, I think it was when you were talking about the kitchen cabaret in the land.
Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned something similar where that attraction is actually walled up or something of the sort. Is this modus operandi for theme parks in general to keep it there? I mean, is it because they think they may use it in the future, or what's the reasoning behind that?
I think it's cost savings and laziness.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, to be honest with you. I mean, what George is talking about and is essentially that behind parts of the walls of Soaring, as you enter through the Fast Pass area, you're actually going through the queue and also part of the theater area for the Kitchen Cabaret show, which became Food Rocks. Again, somebody went behind the scenes, got behind that wall, through a door, looked, and there was part of the stage, still left.
Yeah, there's two answers here. First, in in keeping with the theme that sometimes our memories things seem like a lot longer ago than they were.
Yeah.
The pavilion actually did not close, the Wonders of Life Pavilion, until January 2007. That they were still
wow.
opening it. Yeah, it was still open up until the beginning of
Oh,
2007.
sweet. So we don't have to worry about it until 2032. All right.
There you go. You're
Time.
good.
But demolition is the most expensive thing you can do construction wise. It's more expensive than actually building things. So what they do is they don't demolish anything that they don't have to. It's just like everybody wants to know why River Country's still sitting there and falling apart. Because eventually when they decide to do something with that property, they'll spend the money and budget the money to actually demolish things and haul it out of there and environmentally get rid of all of it the right way. And the same thing's true with this pavilion. Until they have another use for it, there's no reason not to just leave everything there.
When you go to the parks, now we've been focusing a lot on Epcot here, and I'm going to continue that just at least for a moment. If the answer to this question shifts us back to the Magic Kingdom, more power to us. Well, last time I went on the Universe of Energy ride.
Yes.
And that ride has remained unchanged. In fact, the film in there had to have been late 90s, maybe mid to late 90s.
1995, they actually redid that attraction as Ellen's Energy Adventure.
The first time it would essentially put you to. I mean, it was a very. It was over an hour. I think it was like an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, I actually.
I saw it too.
I try not to. Say controversial things that will upset too many people on Twitter. But I watched just as a kind of a curiosity at my point, because I did not really remember the original Universe of Energy film. And so I watched it last week and I just said, oh God, no one would go in there if this was the intro film now. They do warn you about 30 times now, the cast member, this is a 29-minute or 37-minute attraction.
Right.
They tell you that like 6 times during the film with Ellen before you get on the ride, because if anybody gets up in the middle of it, it shuts the whole thing down. But yeah, that original film, you watch it and it's just it's like the worst science class you ever went to.
The most amazing part of the original attraction, though, was the triangular screens that rotated in the pre-show area, they were just absolutely brilliantly done, and it was pretty cool. I mean, the dinosaurs is what everybody called it, the dinosaur ride. That's what everybody wanted to go see.
Right. Yeah.
That's what everybody remembers. Yeah.
That ride, I think everybody would agree, might need an overhaul.
The issue there is a couple of things. One, that's a tough subject to tackle now because, like every other topic that shouldn't be controversial, it is controversial. Right. Energy's controversial now for some reason, and the building, there's probably no way to rework an attraction in that existing building. So it's not a minor expense. It's a massive, major expense. Even getting the cars out of there. I forget what they weigh, but
they're insanely.
It's like 2 tons or something like that. Each of those ride vehicles weighs. So I think that's a big part of the reason why. And I'll tell you what, I don't mind the attraction. I actually like going on it.
You have to remember too that when we say that these machines were 2 tons and then the building is huge, that was part of the appeal when this stuff was built. It was a demonstration that they would say that these moving theaters are only guided by a wire or a 1/4 inch, wide on the floor. That seems like whatever. I got a remote control car now, Bluetooth, but got to go back 30 some years, and this was a demonstration of technology, just as the People Mover was years ago with the linear induction motors. It was this very similar thing that was being done. A lot of the stuff was demonstrating technologies at the time, and that's where Communicator was demonstrating a lot and didn't get updated, and then fell down, and then Innoventions came in.
When it comes to other rides, you had a recent episode talking about Mr. Toad. What do you guys personally lament that doesn't exist anymore? And it doesn't necessarily. I mean, I would hope it was something that maybe you could remember from when you were kids. But even if you hadn't gone on and you said, "Boy, I really wish I could have ridden that."
I think I've pretty much been on everything except the only thing I haven't seen in the Magic Kingdom was the Mickey Mouse review. Other than that,
I never saw that.
yeah, I've seen everything else. I don't think it's any ride in particular for me. I think it is, going back to what I said earlier, Epcot Future World in the mid '80s on a whole. Most people say, "Oh, it's Horizons by far." Well, no, for me it was that whole future experience, promise of tomorrow, the what it revealed, how much it affected my mind and my thought process. To me, that's probably what I missed the most. But that's also the thing that I know, isn't going to be coming back anytime soon.
Right.
Yeah, and that would be the first answer for me. Would be the same. Would be Future World at Epcot. But there's stuff at the Magic Kingdom that I miss too, that they've redone. But I mean I have very fond memories of Delta Dream Flight and If You Had Wings before that. And I like to go through it now and point out when you go into the tunnel and you're shooting at Emperor Zurg flying around. I say, this is where the turbine used to be. The turbine used to be spinning here. And
the Barnstormer.
Yeah, and so I would tell them, and look, see those cloud cutouts down there? They just painted black over them. I said, that used to be the clouds. We'd be flying to destinations here. So I do miss that attraction there. I always enjoyed that.
There's some aspects to it, if you stay in the Magic Kingdom for a second, that are still there but have changed. Maybe not for the better. The one that we've uncovered, or not uncovered, but we've talked about is the Tomorrowland Speedway. How it's essentially, since its opening, has been halved in size, so it's a shadow of its former self. Certain other things have been modified and changed over the years. But the good news is a lot of the rides that are at the Magic Kingdom have remained, pretty much the same since the beginning. But nothing has been touched with Big Thunder Mountain. Who knows? It may get the upgrades like Disneyland got, but I've been on that and they're great. They're perfect for the time.
Right.
Splash is what it is. It hasn't changed, and even though that one opened in the early '90s, it is what it is. But the big ones that everybody talks about is 20K, and also talks about Mr. Toad's as being the biggest losses to that theme park.
It was Mr. Toad one of the ones that you received the most feedback about, also about people missing, your listeners and people who go to your website? Is that one of the ones they missed the most? That they lament? Actually, it only just recently went away, but I mean that they were sad that it was gone.
See, George, you're showing your age too. Do you believe it was 18 years ago that it went away?
Was it 18 years ago? I could have sworn
18 years ago.
Oh, you know what? That's right, because I went on it on my honeymoon. Oh, yep. God. That's the last time I went on it. That's right.
I had the same thing. It's like, wasn't I just on that a few years ago? No,
And what we're finding too is that I think as time has passed, people miss it. And as much as the Save the Toad website is still out there, and there's still websites dedicated, 20,000, they miss it. But I don't know if they're lamenting too much about it. But I don't know. I think we've spread the wealth. Let's put it that way. There aren't a lot of people writing in and do this and talk about this and talk about this. But we get email from everybody asking us to do everything. So we always get an email asking about A, and the next one writes about B and C and D.
And an interesting thing is we also get into conversations about rides we were never on that we wish we had, like that predated kind of most of us, sometimes even Hal. And I think the one that comes up most often there is the swan boats in the Magic Kingdom. We all kind of wish, we have footage, probably 2 or 3 films now that are shot from, on ride footage, including one that was kind of extensive.
Yeah.
And they're just angles of the Magic Kingdom that, only maintenance crew will ever see again.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, not even them, because of the way that the trees have grown or that they've added things. But it was just so cool that you could get on a boat in just off Tomorrowland Plaza and take the boat literally all the way around the Magic Kingdom through Adventureland. And
people forget that it went all the way right next to the treehouse and came back around near the door.
Underneath the castle. You went underneath the castle bridge, and it was just a really cool ride that wasn't very profitable and was very low capacity and prone to breaking down. So it eventually, when it was one of the first rides to go away forever.
And this is a great segue into some of the mysteries that are still out there for you, George. Is that on the Swan Boat footage, we were noticing that the girl piloting the boat had her hand on two different controls, two different wheels, and we couldn't figure out, how is that? Wait, what's going on? What is that going to do? There was also talk that the boats were jet propelled rather than a propeller. There was talk that it was eventually going to be automated, and they were putting a different type of track system in. We have overhead footage from the mid 70s showing all these footings in the water. So that's just one of the many oddball things that all these films and different pieces of research have uncovered. And as we watch the different films and as we talk about an attraction or in an episode, we go back, we find those spots and bring them up, and then you get some additional people writing and saying, oh, I know this, or I work there, or I've done such and such. So there are still a lot of mysteries out there that are just waiting to be uncovered. And actually, we the next film, one of the hinting back to the 71 film, I don't know if many people know this, but after the first couple months, the trams, the tugs for the trams weren't hefty enough to actually pull the weight of the trams with people in them, and they got rid of them. And there's very few pictures of the very first trams, but we've got actual footage of the very first trams that were there to pull the parking lot guests before the Bob Gurr inspired ones were added in a number of years later.
So on that topic, Todd's talking about how we get people who contact us and all. On an early episode, we had a riverboat captain on who told us about a plan that they had originally had to move the riverboats out into Seven Seas Lagoon every night and do booze cruises for the hotel guests on one of the big riverboats. And how, keeping in the story, actually found concept artwork models that showed the Liberty Square riverboats out docked at the Contemporary in one of these early models.
Yep.
So, we take the firsthand evidence of a guy that worked there, and we take the model, and we say, okay, there's evidence here that backs up his claim that this was originally an intent, but he added a wrinkle to it and said the reason it never happened was because the draft of the boats was actually 2 feet too high, and the stacks would have hit the bridge that it would have had to pass under to get out of the canal into the Seven Seas Lagoon. And so we thought, boys, what a cool story. Mm-hmm. So fast forward about a year later, we have Tom Nabby on, and Tom was as a Disney legend, and one of his original responsibilities was the monorail. He was one of the first lead guys on the monorail when they got it up and running. And he happened to tell us a story about the day they were moving the riverboats into the from Seven Seas Lagoon up the channel and into the Magic Kingdom, that they were getting ready to move the boats, and no one had bothered to check whether or not the draft was high enough to be able to get the stacks on. So he tells us the story on the podcast how they went over and literally stood on the monorail beam and dropped a weight with a string attached to it that was X feet long. And that's how they measured how long it was, and it could get under there without a problem. So we then told him, like, hey, we heard this story. And he said, no, it wasn't that reason. He says, even if that had been planned, and he didn't know that it had ever been planned, he gave us like the 5 other reasons, most of them having to do with actually navigating it in and out and what a lengthy process that would be as to why they never did it. But it's really cool that 45 years later, you're getting these firsthand accounts, and everybody kind of remembers it a little bit differently.
And it also proves that how much of the history and how much of their intentions you can find out, but just by studying what you think is just a piece of concept art. And that's it. The concepts are hidden, and there's little treasures everywhere you look in that artwork.
I love when you share that on your site. I also love when you share the satellite views that you've dug up, especially when you talk about the
satellites. There were no
track.
Satellites in 1953.
Yeah, but the
aerial photography.
Yeah, you show the reduction of that Grand Prix, the Grand Prix track.
Yeah,
and that's amazing to actually see. You have that little
the animated loop.
Yeah, the animated loop. Thank you. Of the difference between when it started and today. I love that.
Right.
You mentioned the Contemporary, Brian. I'd like to move on to the hotels for a moment, if I may.
Sure.
One of the first episodes I listened to, you guys talked in length about the construction of the Contemporary. And you said some things that when I told, they were new to me. The information was new to me. And then when I told people, hey, did you hear this about how they built a contemporary? They're like, yes, George, we know that. Welcome to the party kind of thing.
Chests of drawers.
Yes, the chest of drawers. Not to give it all away, folks. You probably all know, but I want you to listen to the Retro Disney World podcast and hear the guys talk about the construction of the contemporary. But when it came to how the actual design was for the resort itself, a lot of even though there's a plethora of hotels there now, a lot of the originally planned ones never came to fruition. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yep.
Originally, there were 5 planned around Seven Seas Lagoon and Bay Lake, and they built 2 of them originally. The pad for what eventually became the Grand Floridian sat there for 15 years.
Yeah, and actually, if you look at going back to aerial and satellite, if you look at that even on the opening day, that was squared off completely, like a square jutting out, because that was going to be the exact footprint of the Asian resort.
Yeah.
The Asian resort. And so everything was going to have a theme, like the Polynesian has a theme.
Correct.
The Asian, the Persian, and the Venetian were the other 3. Mm-hmm. And they did soil tests for both the Persian and the Venetian. The Persian was going to be kind of behind where the Contemporary is, kind of down the monorail spur towards where the monorails go when they're going back to the Roundhouse. Mm-hmm. And that one, the ground was too soft. And then they actually did testing for the site of the Persian again in the 90s when they were doing some work over there. Eisner was looking at adding another hotel between the Contemporary and the Polynesian on land that some of it has been cleared for that solar project they're doing now.
Yeah, that was the Venetian was going to be.
Yeah, the Venetian was going to be there.
Yeah, right. The Persian was up on the north end. Yeah. There was another one that most people don't know about or remember. There's something called Buffalo Junction, which was going to essentially sit somewhere between River Country and where Wilderness Lodge was. It was on plans later, or even talked about and scrubbed.
It's going to have its own railroad between them and retail district.
But the rumor has it that something between River Country and Wilderness Lodge will eventually occur, and you'll probably eventually get to link all that stuff together on that side of it. But Buffalo Junction, just north of where the airport was.
Were the other 3 hotels scrapped because at the time they weren't getting the tourists in? I mean, everything's all a matter of money at that point. So what made them scrap those plans?
The energy crisis first off of 73, 74. And then the general economic malaise of the 70s. That's the first thing that originally said, okay, we can. And they did build the golf resort. We shouldn't. They built the golf resort. They
expanded the Polynesian too.
And they were building resorts at Lake Buena Vista. They were building housing down there. So I mean, they were doing some more with it. But in terms of developing that part of the property there, really it was the energy crisis. And second, they had this company-wide commitment to build Epcot. They had made the decision they were going to build Epcot, and the World Showcase, World Showcase had many iterations, including it was also going to sit on land that is now became the Walt Disney World Speedway, for a time, but a part of the parking lot they were going to build possibly there or between the Transportation Ticket Center and the Polynesian. They were looking at putting it there too, but it was really going to be more just like kind of an international shopping mall. And so that concept kind of evolved and eventually got pushed together with Future World to become Epcot Center. But so they were looking at all that. The big thing that drove them though was their corporate leadership said we're not a hotel company. And so it was not a priority for them, and they didn't really see it as their primary business. And that was, number one edict when they hired Eisner in '84, when the board upheaval happened, was develop the Florida property, do a lot more with it to generate a lot more income. Right. And that's why they went off on the boom to build all the hotels.
What about now what's called Disney Springs? What was that area like back when the Magic Kingdom first opened? Was it all residential? What would people have done in that area?
Well, when it actually opened, if you look just where Disney Springs is now, the there were, I believe there was a total of 3 different places to stay. They didn't open until the mid 70s, maybe 75, 76, somewhere in there. But to the very north were the original tree houses, where the tree houses are now. Those are rebuilds completely from the ground up of the originals. I stayed in the originals in 1980. As you came further south, closer towards Disney Springs, there was 1 or 2 additional places to stay that were originally going to be corporate housing when the whole Lake Buena Vista was going to be a community type thing and bringing people in for corporate events and whatnot. They wanted to sell these out as condos, but by the mid 80s, they were just basically renting them out as hotel rooms, as villas. So there were 2 different types of villas, I believe, at the time. There were these brown ones that had these funky angles, and then they had these other ones that were gray, more your standard 80s condo looking type things. And I stayed in those. And that was all, those 2 areas were completely flattened and thus became Disney Institute and thus became, Disney Springs.
You don't find much footage of that, do you, when it comes to the film or the photos that you've received or things you restore?
We have uncovered some of the pool area and some around the clubhouse around there. There's an individual that we know by the name of David Coolidge. We restored some of his personal films. He's a painter. He's a well-known painter. And he traveled down there a number of times to display his paintings at Lake Buena Vista at one of their art events.
Yeah, they would do every year starting in, I think, 77, they started doing the Festival of the Masters down there, which went away when they started reconstructing for Disney Springs and may come back.
Right. So, but that whole area, we have a little bit of footage on it. We do have some additional footage coming soon, but a little hint there. But we've got also, if you remember that whole area from where the what is now Fulton's Crab Shack, the Empress Lily was.
Oh, yes.
Is all the way up to where the tree houses. It was a other than those gray villas, it was a mass of brown and orange design. I mean, it was a very natural setting, a lot of pines, not as open and fresh and as white as you see it today and as busy. It was a much more laid back atmosphere. It was also a shopping experience, but also a place where people in the area could go to get some local provisions as well.
You mentioned before when you guys used to go down, especially you mentioned it more, Todd. Brian, you must have brought stuff back when you went that one time as a kid. You were talking about souvenirs.
Yeah.
Let's face it, things are collectible these days. You've even given away some older vintage items as prizes on your show. Could we talk a little bit about souvenirs? I mean, the difference between what you could buy at the parks today is a lot different than when they first opened.
Well, one of the words you just said is key. Parks.
Ah, yes.
Everything says Disney Parks on it.
Right.
So if we go back to what I said in my guidebook back in the late 90s and early 2000s, I would say that if you see something at a shop and you like it, buy it. Because chances are the percent chance of you finding it somewhere else within all the different resorts and theme park was very low. That is not a rule of thumb anymore. If you look at the bottom of anything, if you look at the shopping bags, you look at all the stickers, everything is genericized down to the napkins and the forks.
Yeah.
It's all Disney parks. Don't get me wrong. There are still things that you could buy in the Germany Pavilion that you're not going to be able to get anywhere else. I mean, there's certain limits to that. But it has become, more generic. They still do some nice custom items. But the variety of the merchandise, I'm going to use my Epcot example and also use some examples of, the Ticket Transportation Center where they have a little souvenir stand. The type of stuff that you get there today is just not what it used to be. There were enough trinkety things from little games and keychains and magnets for every single pavilion, where you may have a magnet for a ride now, but you're not going to find the end cap just filled with Horizons merchandise. You may get it now for a period of time when they're trying to sucker money out of us. But.
Right. I think it bears mentioning that the merchandising there goes through 3 phases. Pretty much from opening through the early 80s, how Hal's best description of it was really crappy.
Yeah.
Because what it was most of the merchandise that they sold then, the souvenirs, were things like ashtrays and
Milk glass mugs,
kitchen towels that said Polynesian Village and generic. It's treasure craft. It's they were souvenirs that the exact same item would be sold in Niagara Falls and say Niagara Falls on it, but it would say Walt Disney World. And so when you just shot glasses, things like that. That's the kind of stuff that really dominated the merchandising in the 70s. And it's cool now. I mean, I have a Polynesian Village dish towel set that my buddy got me 10 years ago for Christmas that's still in the original package. I'm never going to use it in my kitchen. Maybe someday I'll frame it or find some use for it. But, it's if somebody brought me back a dish towel today, I'd be like, I don't know that I need a Art of Animation Resort dish towel. So that was the first phase. And then as the 80s came in, the early 80s, really through the 90s, you got a lot of attraction-specific merchandise. You got things like the pens that had the water in the back of them with, like, in Epcot Center, it was a spaceman that moved back and forth. And in the Magic Kingdom, it was Tinkerbell floating back and forth. Each park had its own stuff, a lot of attraction-specific merchandise. In fact, this month on the podcast, we're giving away a Pirates of the Caribbean glass mug, which led to like 100 tweet discussion as to when it actually originated, and like we finally narrowed it down that it was actually like an early 80s item, because we didn't know it was 80s or 90s or when, because there's no copyright on it. So you had some real, and that's where people have the most powerful memories of merchandise, is that 80s and 90s stuff where all the resorts had a lot of specific resort stuff, that had the name of the resort and special designs and unique items. And then as the 2000s came, as Todd mentioned, it all kind of became genericized. And what you do find now in one shop, you find in 100 shops.
Right.
And they are starting the merchandise team, I think, over the last couple of years. There's more resort. I know for a fact the resort-specific merchandise has started to return. Hats and T-shirts, but also some other trinkets and stuff from these resorts bearing the resort's actual names that isn't generic. And we're starting to see it more with the attractions. The one exception I remember is after everybody freaked out when they took Figment out of Imagination, and then they brought him back in 2003 with the third iteration of that Journey into Imagination ride. I really feel like there was a meeting where they said, okay, these pies want Figment, we're going to shove them down your throat. Because there was like just between the gigantic Figment meet and greet, there was so much Figment merchandise that was done like 2003, 2004 when he came back. And it's funny now because there actually isn't a lot now.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
It's hard to find it now, but there was a ton from right around when they brought him back into the ride. And some of it I come across today, I'm like, really, this stuff's kind of cool. I wish they were still making it.
Do you guys consider yourselves collectors of these souvenirs and ephemera?
I've got a bunch of ephemera and I've got everything from some menus and old park maps and eyes and ears, and I've dumped a lot of it over the years. I was going through. I recently moved. And I went through my books, the box again. I'm like, I gotta give this stuff away.
I was just going to reference that. Todd and I have both gone through moves, and actually, all of us except for JT have gone through.
Yeah, JT needs to move now
since the podcast started, and each of us have kind of gone into these. In my case, it's about a 20-year collection of things, and not a ton of stuff. I have one curio cabinet that displays Epcot and cool old Disney stuff 10 months a year, and then Christmas stuff the other 2 months a year. But outside of that, I've really reached a point where unless it's something I really want to keep in terms of unique paper or something, I'm trying not to buy cool stuff, because what happens is after you have it, 6 months, it's like buying a pool table. You say, I really don't play pool that often, and now I got this giant table.
So people listen to our podcast and win a lot of the stuff that is coming from our personal collections that we're giving away. So
that's true.
I do have there's a holy grail out there. I want to get Walt's autograph, but maybe if I sell everything, I can help buy an autograph.
Your listeners are reaping the rewards of your moving. because now that you've got all those boxes that you don't want to keep in storage or anything.
Yeah, and this year we're doing we give a prize away at the end of the year, a big prize that we take from all the entries over the course of the year. And this prize this year, every month we're adding something to it. So by the end of the year, there's going to be 12 or 13 things in this box.
Yeah, it's like the Showcase Showdown.
Yeah. It's just amazing.
Right. So, yeah, each month we not only give away a prize, but we then add a prize to the pot. And so each of us have been pulling a cool thing to add to the prize pot. In fact, today I just told Todd I accidentally bought a second 1993 Disney World calendar because I collect these calendars. And I said, well,
you accidentally bought it?
At the pot.
And it goes.
I have a question here from my goddaughter, who is, we took her to Disney World. Let's see, I guess she was just shy of 1 year old back in '99. She didn't go back for a while. We went together in 2009, and ever since then, she and her family are the pretty much the traveling partners when my wife and I go down. Okay. And she is going to try, I think she's seriously considering trying to apply to do the Disney internship program over there. Mm-hmm. That just goes to show how much she enjoys it down there and how much she's into everything Disney. She wanted me to ask you guys a question. So sure. I feel this is a great way to close before we start talking about the website and stuff. She wants to know, and her name is Anna, so a shout out to Anna. If Walt was still around today, what do you think he would say about all the new attractions and changes that have occurred at Disney World?
Well, Anna, that is one of the hardest questions to answer.
Of course.
Let me roll back to a story about Walt first.
Sure.
There's a great story about Walt when he built Disneyland, and he caught a gardener. And he said to the gardener, what are you doing? He goes, well, the people started walking over the curb here and beat a path down, and I'm planting the flowers back. I'm putting the grass back. He goes, Walt says, no, you don't do that. They're telling you what they want. Put the path there. Change it, right? So you learn from the people. Now, how we learn from what people and individuals visiting Disney World want, I'm sure that a lot of people would say absolutely, because the world has changed. People want the faster rides. The education side that they always threw as a moniker for Epcot has, that's lost its touch and all that. And we have to remember that the world is different. What people want is different, and the Disney company is doing the best they can to adjust the theme parks to what they feel the experiences are wanted. And also, too, they're under the pressure of, their competitors down the street. So from that aspect, they are doing what they need or feel they need to do in order to keep the revenue and keep things driving. And we also have to remember that at this point now, we're how many animated features in? When Walt started, he only had a handful of characters to go by. You have a lot of different people that are going to like a lot of different areas of the animation and the attractions and all the different characters and stuff they have. So you have a lot more that you can do now. I think Walt would have, at least from my perspective, probably pretty much mixed feelings on what he would see. I think there's certain aspects that were done in the late 90s and early 2000s where again, I don't want, as Brian said, to start a Twitter war, but we're pretty abysmal. But I have to commend them on going back to some of the roots that they've done with Storyland Circus and then the Little Mermaid area and those different things. If we continue to see it, I've been to Cars Land, and Cars Land in California, it's amazing. It's what you would expect to come out of something of Disney caliber. Oh, wow. If we continue to see those changes and those things in the physical aspect of the park, I think Walt's happy. I'm certainly not going to comment on the ticketing and fast pass system because we'll be here all night discussing that, and I'm sure he may have different views on that. But that's Brian. What would you say?
I'll give a couple of answers. The first answer was somebody else's answer. There was a wonderful man named Jack Spence. He's still alive, so I don't want to talk about him in the past tense, but he doesn't write for All Ears anymore. But the website All Ears, he would write a column every month or two, and they were always very, very good. He actually wrote a column. If you Google what would Walt do, Jack Spence, he wrote a whole column about this. And it's a really interesting thing. I mean, the quick answer is no one knows what Walt would think. It is all speculation. It's all guessing. And I think Todd's right. There certainly are some things he'd probably be like, I don't really care for that. But overall, that question was asked to Lillian Disney in 1982 when they opened Epcot. What would Walt think of all this? And she said he'd be thrilled. He'd be shocked that his name is carried on like this and that the company had gotten as big as it's gotten. And I think he'd be positively blown away by the size and scale of everything now. I mean, are they the largest entertainment company in the world now?
If not, pretty much there.
I mean, I think so with this, with ABC and everything else now. I think they probably are. They were a small movie studio in California with an amusement park when he died. So this is like mind blowing to him. And certainly I think he'd probably immediately start picking apart the quality of things. But then he would run into modern day corporate governance where we don't get to do things just because you say so. There's stockholders and the SEC and everybody else that you have to answer to. That just wasn't like that when he was alive. When he was alive, he said, I wanted to, rip down that building and put that up, and they just did it. And if you study corporate governance these days, you can't just do that anymore. Right. So fascinating. But I think overall he'd just be blown away.
Well, thank you for answering that question. I know she's going to love hearing your answers. Thanks.
Yeah, good luck on your application, Anna. Yeah, good luck. Hope to see you down there.
Let's talk about the website a bit before we go. It's RetroDisneyWorld.com.
Correct.
And the podcast comes out once a month. Is there a particular date that you guys always shoot for, or like a third Monday or something like that?
Right now, we're pretty much around the third week in the around the 20-something of the month. We may move it to the first of a month and do double up on an episode or skip a week or something like that. But yeah, it's once a month, and people have asked us, do it twice a month, do it weekly. And there's just a simple answer to that. And if you listen to the latest episode, we actually talked about that on episode 18. But it's quality over content. I'm sorry, quality over quantity. Right. And it takes a lot of us to put the show together. There's 4 of us here, but we all kind of share in the writing and putting it together and figuring things out. I do the editing. Brian's the QA manager, so to speak. And it's a lot of time, and we want it to be fun for us. If we did this, every week or 2 weeks, we get burned out. Right. We'd absolutely get burned out. So it's a hoot for us to sit down and spend 3 to 4 hours recording or whatever it is, depending on we burn the midnight oil. We don't start till 9 o'clock at night. We're sometimes going to almost 1 a.m, depending on the topic and the episode. And half the time we're fooling around and stuff. But it's great, and it's a lot of fun. So but yeah, that's the long answer.
Well, there's a lot of research that goes into it, right, guys?
Oh, absolutely.
And you guys all have your roles, I would guess. Like you said, you do the editing.
Yeah, and each of us tends to take a lead on an episode. So they kind of we designate. Usually somebody volunteers for it, but often it has fallen to Hal when it's an older thing that he has firsthand experience with, as it did with Mr. Toad and as it did with World of Motion. But each of us have pitched in and kind of led on an episode. It's interesting. This next episode, we kind of split it up into sections. Right. So each of us has taken a little piece of it, which I guess we can announce, Todd. Right?
Yeah, we might as well. So the winning, we had. I mentioned it earlier. We had The Land, Communicore, and The Living Seas. In a heated battle of voting, and it was amazing because one leapt out, and then it was like a horse race. It was really interesting to watch. But the winner, our listeners have voted, and they chose The Living Seas for the next episode. So that's what we'll be doing.
Oh, I look forward to that. Okay, so this will post on the 16th. So what do you when do you think the show will be up?
We're recording it a week from tonight, I think.
Okay,
we recorded the 16th or the 17th, so we generally have about a week of post production. So
great.
We'll target the May 24th is probably what we're looking at.
Toward the end of the month, something to listen to over Memorial Day weekend, I guess, right?
Exactly. Get it up before you ever have something to listen to while they travel.
You guys are on iTunes, so I encourage everybody to subscribe.
We are on Google Play now, too.
Are you really? Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, we're on Google Play. If you search there, it was a couple of weeks ago we got added, so...
And no matter where you find the guys, leave them a 5-star review because it does help them get discovered, get their way up on top in all these aggregators out there. So please do that. Now, I know you guys try to monetize the show. You have merchandise and sometimes you have sponsors. You want to talk about some of the merchandise?
Yeah, so the merchandise, is an interesting thing. We first started out just by doing some of our logo stickers and whatnot. What we started getting into was how's a kind of a natural, and also by his full-time job, he's a graphic designer, so he loves sitting down and designing things. So we started taking funny things that happened during the show and taking the episodes and turning them into interesting T-shirts. And stickers and designs and notebooks and all sorts of stuff. So we have a shop at Redbubble. So if you go to retrodisneyworld.com/support us, that's SUPPORTUS, it'll take you to our Redbubble shop. And we've done electrical water pageant shirts with the dragon design. We've got the Newness Wave Machine Surf Generation Company, which is a
Roy's Cabin.
Roy's Cabin, which is at the.
Now we've alluded to Roy's Cabin a little bit on the show. I was going to make sure I was going to keep Roy's Cabin as a little tease for the folks to listen to your show. But did you want to give a little synopsis of Roy's Cabin?
I'll give you the short version because
Okay.
it actually the explanation on our show spreads over 2 episodes.
Yeah, list all of us.
I think the second and third episode.
So this will be a
like
good
that.
tease. Good tease.
But the short version of it is that when they bought the property, the 27,000 acres in Florida, on the shores of what is today Bay Lake, there was a cabin that was there that was used at least once by Roy Disney and some Disney executives to kind of as I don't want to say a headquarters, but as a meeting point before they did a walking tour of what would eventually be Fort Wilderness, and jumped on a boat to survey the land where they would ultimately build the Contemporary and Discovery Island and that. So somewhere along the way, it got the moniker Roy's Cabin long before we came along. And there's actually photos in the Florida State Archives of Roy walking along the outside of it. And then Hal did a tremendous amount of research after we talked about it on our first episode. And he ended up getting like some personal documents and other things and finding out what the actual usage and ownership was and what its ultimate fate was. And the short story is the ultimate fate is when it was far too dilapidated when Disney began to construct Fort Wilderness for it to survive. So they demolished it. And when you get off the boat dock at Fort Wilderness and to go into the resort right there where the general store and all is, right around there is where Roy's Cabin used to be. And we tend to mention it every single episode.
It's almost like a hidden Mickey. Right?
It's a hidden Mickey. There's a couple hidden Mickeys in actually Roy's Cabin appears the most frequent. Chest of Drawers comes up a number of times. And the other one that's only made 2 or 3 appearances is a family by the name of the McFarkles. They will make an appearance during.
And then off the episodes, but usually in some process during the recording, one of us teases Todd about a cotton jumper. Because he described in the souvenir episode, he described this Mickey Mouse toy that he had. That actually was it was a balloon inflator. We later
terrible.
found like original ones for sale. But he described it as wearing a cotton jumper. And the next month, JT just kept hitting him with cotton jumpers.
The editing that month was a nightmare.
Yeah.
So with the merchandise, we've got all sorts of stuff. And now what we've done is every month we come out with a new shirt. So we did Tom Nabby. We had him on, and he developed something called the Nabby Grabber, which retrieves fallen items down between the monorail tracks. So we made a Tom Nabby Grabber company shirt. Like I said, we've got the electrical one. They should be on the Redbubble shop now, but we made shirts for groups going that are different colors and are the names of the different Mr. Toad's cars. So those are on there. So every episode we've got something coming out, but the Roy's Cabin and the Wave Generator are by far my favorites.
Do you solicit people for their video footage? I mean, their film footage to provide a service to restore the films.
Exactly, and here's how it was. If any of your listeners or anybody out there has film footage that they would like restored, if they pay the transfer fee, that is the cost of scanning it and putting it in a digital format, we will do the restoration for free as long as we're allowed to view it and show other people. We don't we can cut out faces and cut out people and all that stuff.
He's talking about Disney related footage. Just
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We don't want to show Aunt Bessie's 90th birthday.
Yeah, I'm not interested.
That's
in
right.
that. You can let other people do that, but
Those will be other guests in some other week.
exactly. We have had a few people who have contacted us. We've had a few people that we've reached out to from other sources, and only one or two has ever actually decided to say, yeah, you know what, I'm going to get it done. There's some people that have some very rare footage, and we've actually paid for theirs because it was so rare. So can't hurt to ask us.
All right,
And then we've
that's
had
great.
people that we've contacted who've got like bad transfers on YouTube and say, hey, if you send it to us, we'll do it for free.
Yeah.
And they say, sure. And then we never hear from them again.
Never hear
And they're
from
gone, and they have some really, really cool rare
So there's some cool stuff out there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then some people no more than them setting up a projector projecting into a wall, and they set the camera off on the side, and it's just horrible.
And here you're making that offer, and they're just not taking you up on it.
No.
Yeah,
people just
no.
don't want-
How can people find you or follow you on the interwebs? Is there social networking sites that you would like to point the people to?
Absolutely. So we are on. So personally, I'm the one that responds to most of the stuff, but all four of us have access to do everything. But you can go to RetroDisneyWorld.com, and we're RetroWDW on Twitter, and Retro Disney World on Facebook as well. RetroWDW on Pinterest and Instagram. So we are on all the major ones.
And I'll do my role and plug the hosts.
Go ahead, go for it.
There
Right
you
now.
go.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Let's
With
listen to Brian.
With
This is
no
the-
script.
This is the
Follow-
professional way.
You follow our hosts, Hal Bowers, on Twitter at GoAwayGreen. Follow JT Kuzier at Hoagie's Garage. And you can find me, Brian Miles, or you can find me on Twitter and Facebook at Brian P. Miles.
Look at that.
I
It's built in.
I
I
feel
only
like
screwed my own part up. Look at
Yeah,
that.
I know. I like that.
I feel like I just listened to the end of one of your episodes. Just that was pretty good.
And I will say editing the end is one of the best parts of editing.
Now, why
We
is
always-
that?
I love putting it together so that it sums it up. It feels good, and people want to come back and listen for more.
What happened when I first pre-recorded that script, because I was getting tired of kind of running through it every episode.
And make him do it every episode.
I would then send it to Todd and usually drop some kind of music vaguely related to the topic or directly related to whatever we discussed that episode. And my favorite was when we did the Disney MGM opening, and I redid the script of the end of the Great Movie Ride.
It was great.
It's just I had the whole "Hooray for Hollywood" in the background, and I masked my voice like I was speaking through the microphone, and that was a lot of fun.
That one came out great.
Yeah, but usually it's just a matter of dropping the right music behind it now. Now I actually leave it to Todd. He just has the voice, and he drops in all the music and whatever else he's doing with it. And that's kind of cool because then it's a surprise for me when I'm doing the Q&A or the QA quality assurance listen to see what he's done with it,
Yep.
that month, what music he's dropped in.
Exactly.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Everybody, I want you to listen to Retro Disney World podcast. Go to retrodisneyworld.com. Listen to the show. Go back. Once I discovered the guys, I was trying to think. You were about at the Christmas episode. So that would have been,
Okay.
about number 12, number 11, somewhere around there?
Yeah, about 15 or so, yeah.
Oh, okay. And I went back to the beginning because I'm a completionist, and I had to start from the beginning, and I worked my way up, and it's a
If
great
you jump
listen.
in the middle, you just won't understand. What's this
Yeah.
chest of drawers with Roy's
Yeah.
head and the Farkles? I don't understand it. you know?
You have to be there from the beginning. It's like watching Breaking Bad. You have to start from the beginning and work your way all the way through. And this is fun. This is a lot of fun.
And we'll also tell our listeners who are listening that they should subscribe to George and Tony's podcast. And why don't you tell our listeners where to find you?
Exactly.
Oh, thank you. We are at georgeandtony.com. We're also on iTunes under the George and Tony Entertainment Show. We don't have a website like you guys. Our site just houses the episodes. We don't have the kind of text that you guys have and the blogging that you do. That's why I love your site. You have all the films out there. We have none of that. But if you want to find our show, we're at georgeandtony.com. But if you want to contact us, we're on Facebook at George and Tony Entertainment, and we're on Twitter at George and Tony. So thank you for letting me say that. Guys, I'm going to be listening at the end of the month to episode 19. I want my listeners to do the same. I hope we can keep this dialogue going, and I am looking for film that I want to hopefully get you to restore.
And one other thing for the listeners and any Disney listener out there, if you're going to be at D23 this coming November, let us know, because we will probably be having a retro WDW event down there. We're going to be doing something special for our listeners, and it's in the planning stages, but it's going to be fun, and there may be some exclusive films released then.
Yeah,
So.
that's November 19th and 20th, the weekend before Thanksgiving, down there at the Contemporary Resort.
Yep.
Once you guys told me about that, I'm trying to work that out myself. So love to meet you guys in person.
There we go.
Be a lot of fun.
Thank you guys for being here tonight.
Thanks for having us,
George.
George. Appreciate it.
It's
Chimes Out. And that was my conversation with Todd McCartney and Brian P. Miles from the Retro Disney World podcast. I'd like to thank the guys for being here this week. I'd also like to thank Hal and JT from the Retro Disney World podcast for allowing me to talk to the other guys and giving them some time off from the extensive research that they do for each episode. And don't forget, their website is retrodisneyworld.com. Check them out and check out their merchandise tab, as we talked about in the show. Hal has created some clever designs of some of the things that they have spoken about in the show, and I think that even the casual Disney fan would be interested in picking up some of that merchandise. Now, for those of you who are new to the show, this is the part where we do our thank yous before we close the show. I'd like to thank Tom Lewy, our voiceover guy, and Chuck Strauch, the man who designed our wonderful logo. They're also the Rebels at Realm. That'd be Mark Ronick, Lowell Meltzer, Buzz Burbank, and the easy writer himself, the engineer extraordinaire, R.J. Diaz. And of course, this show would not be possible without a generous grant from Connie and our benevolent overlord, Bianca. Tony is scheduled to be back next week, and we may actually find out how he did on his PMP exam. Thank you very much for listening. We hope you'll return next week. In the meantime, perhaps you'll go back into our archives and check out some of our shows. The closing of the show is going to be very hard to explain to those who are new to us, so you're going to have to go back to the archives and kind of get a gist of how we handle the closing of the show. This month, we changed it up just a bit, and we were going to pay tribute to Prince at the end of the show every week this month, leading up to his birthday at the beginning of June. Considering the guests we had on the show today and the content that we had, I think we're going to change it up just a little bit and return to the Prince tribute next week. So until then, rest in peace, Walt Disney.
The preceding presentation was brought to you by the Realm Network.